About 7:03, just about. So we'll get started. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight for really a conversation, between Bob Driscoll and I. We're really excited that you all have decided to join us. We have a really exciting sort of, I don't even say agenda, because it's really just a free-flowing conversation. But as some people have already kind of figured out, there's a Q&A section. We'll spend some time at the end with some Q&As, but we'll also, as Bob and I are just, talking, going back and forth, if you got a question, just, shoot it in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that, we address it. And really, we're just kind of looking forward to getting a chance to be with all of you all virtually, but really getting a chance to engage with you all, tell you what's going on at PC, and just really sort of, reminisce and talk about the amazing things going on in Friartown. So I don't know if I need to give an introduction to our fearless leader, the wonderful Bob Driscoll, but he is, I'll say personally for me, I have been so fortunate enough, graduate of 2017, and now a current employee at Providence College to be able to not only be a student athlete under Bob Driscoll, but also to be a work colleague now, and to kind of see the other side of it. This man is truly someone that I've always looked up to and really have learned to admire and really learn from, in the way in which he carries himself, the way in which he represents Providence College, the Friar spirit, in just such a tremendous sort of way. So without further ado, a round of applause for Mr. Bob Driscoll. How are you today?
I'm living the dream. Thank you for those kind words. I wish my wife was here. She might change her opinion of me if she heard you speak, Nick. But we were talking before we went live about when you and Marie were on, how proud I was of that moment, thinking we talked about creating the model program in all of college athletics, where you teach young people the core values to be successful in life, and we do that through sport. And when I see you sitting here and I see Marie and so many other former student athletes out in the world doing great things, it makes me feel really good inside, knowing that the hard work of our coaches in the entire college has really had an impact, because you people are living and breathing examples of what Friartown does. So I'm really proud that you're my teammate as an official way now, and thank you for being on here tonight. Nick was right. This is simply a dialogue. There's nothing worse than having somebody talk at you. And one of the things I tell my student athletes and even my children are that there are silver linings even in these really difficult times. I promise you, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation tonight on a Thursday at 80 degrees outside if it wasn't for, unfortunately, this pandemic. But I've found that it has really given us an opportunity to connect as family members and as Friar teammates. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I really hope you and your family are healthy. I've talked a lot to my student athletes about these are really difficult times, and what are you going to do during the time between when the next ball gets tipped or the next time the puck gets dropped. And we've talked a lot about a growth mindset. There are a lot of people out there that are going to really struggle psychologically right now because it's normal, and we're going to talk a little bit about our mindfulness training. But one of the things I've challenged my student athletes and my coaches and my teammates on is use this time to grow, use this time to really reflect and do an audit of your program or of your life. And when we do come out of this and we get back to Friartown, imagine how great that feeling is going to be. And the other thing I share with my student athletes all the time is you really don't control what happens to you. You actually can only control your reaction to it. And we do have a choice. And so a lot of my time and energy and a lot of coaches' time and energy has gone into connecting with people because of the relationships. The culture here at Providence is really, really important, and it lives in these conversations and to be there for your teammates when they need you. And so I'm using this as an opportunity to get better personally, and the coaches as well. And I tell my student athletes that Friartown's built for this, right? We're built for tough times, and cohesively coming out of this in a really better space. So I'm just really excited to be here with you tonight. So, Nick, I'll kick it back
Yeah.
to you. Let me ask you a question, Nick.
Yep.
You were a student athlete here. I'm curious if you could share with the Friar family what you learned as a student athlete and how did that impact when you were teaching in the inner cities of Baltimore. And now that you're back in Friartown, share with the family a little bit about what your new mission is and what your title is and what we're trying to do collaboratively here in Friartown.
Absolutely. So I think, when I reflect back on being a student athlete, I'm fortunate enough to have had some really good seasons. We definitely won a lot, but it was really more about the types of things and the character that's built, right? And I know I think Eric Burchell was talking about Coach White and the relationships that you build and those sort of life lessons about grit, about dedication, about sacrifice, about really giving everything that you got. And so for me, as someone who, was a soccer player here and saw some great success, the next sort of venture for me was teaching. And I always felt that, having the ability to have been a student athlete here at Providence College, really can prepare me to do whatever it is that's next. So for me, like Bob was mentioning, I spent a couple years down in Baltimore, Maryland, as a special ed middle school math teacher. And to say that it was as a challenge is an understatement, right? But I would always say that, when times got tough, I could really sort of rely on some of the key sort of foundations of what I learned at PC. And sometimes it sounds cliche, that hard work and teamwork and sacrifice, but in earnest, I can really sort of attest to the fact that the ability to make genuine connection, the ability to see the value and the specialness in each individual, really did come from Friartown. And there are many other programs across the country, but there's something really, really special about being a Friar that translates wherever you go. And so for me, leaving and then teaching and having that foundation really sort of set me up for success there. But, like Bob mentioned, to now be back in this sort of capacity as director of diversity and inclusion, doing some really great work here in athletics, it really shows that, what you build at Friartown really continues on and really sort of transforms what we're doing. So to me, I have to sometimes think about, wow, like I'm actually in this role back here at Providence. And I used to joke, I was like, I'd love to come back to PC. I don't know how it would happen, but the ability to come back and do some great work, in the diversity space for athletics is something that, I always cared about as a student athlete, as Bob knows, and many other folk know, but to continue to be able to do that now and really build upon, the strategic goals and that we have as an athletic department, and just really continuing to build up that culture, right? Because that's really what's so important about Friartown. Yes, it's important about, winning Big East titles, competing for national championships, 100% graduation. All of those things are so important, but it's all about that culture. And that's what, brings 93 people together on a Thursday night. It's not about the wins, it's about the culture and that sort of feeling. So it is really, tremendous to be back and to really be doing some great work. And a lot of that comes from you, Bob, and sort of those, those conversations of possibility that, you had even before I came back, when we sat down at the end of my senior year, I think it was, and we were, sitting down, just kind of talking and, picking each other's brains and talking about, what you felt like was the next sort of frontier in your time at Providence. So it's a large credit to you and the commitment that you've had, and being able to kind of come back and help build that has been something tremendous.
But it's nothing better when the student becomes the teacher. And I know you have a lot of important work to do with all of us. And all we have to do is look what's happening in the world today. And we just have to be better. And I want us in the college level, in Providence College, to be a leader in making that change. So maybe what I can do for those of you who are on is to kind of paint a bigger picture. Because when I when I came here as an athlete and as a coach my whole life, I'm obsessively competitive, and winning has always been really, really important to me. And I was always, as a young child, everybody, my father and mother thought I was a poor sport, but I would often say, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. That didn't go over well, but it is a competitive world. Now you can win with dignity, you can lose with dignity, and I've learned that. But I've also realized, as somebody who came from a working class background, and my dad fought in World War II and didn't get his high school education, that as the first person in my family to ever get an education, education has been the key to success in my life and my family's life. And for the longest time at Providence, my vision was to win championships, because winning is important. And I'm proud to say we've done that. We won national championship, Big East championships. We have won hockey's championships, and that's great. But really, for me, what's important is graduation. I wanted us to graduate 100% of our student athletes. And right now we're graduating at a 93%, which is in the top 1% in the country. And just to put that in context, that's like 6 percentage points higher than the general student population. And when you think about the time it takes to be a student athlete and compete against the best in the classroom and the best on the playing field, that's a testament to these young people. But this concept of most respected is probably the most important thing for me, is that I really look at sport to teach you the core values of honesty, integrity, hard work, being a good teammate, standing up for people that have less power and less influence, because you have the opportunity to change that. So the mission I want to share, and this is new part of our strategic plan. It says our mission is to build champion citizens, scholars, and athletes who will positively impact the world around them. And I'm hoping we have some student athletes, former student athletes on the line here tonight. I know Nick's going to go out and change the world. Marie's going to go out and change the world, and take your education and do that. And I think it's a different way of looking at the role of athletics. It certainly has been embraced by our trustees and our president and our alumni, because you want to be proud. I mean, you can't control the outcomes of games. You can only control your effort. But the concept that you're about doing something bigger and more selfless than just winning really gets me excited at this stage in my life. And there aren't a lot of programs out there doing that. And I want you, as my teammates out there, to understand that and kind of be proud of that, because it's not an easy task to fight these battles that we have to fight out there to kind of change the world, right?
Absolutely. And and one of the things that I really admire too is that I think, when you reflect, and, if I'm not mistaken, one of your favorite athletes is Muhammad Ali. And of course we remember Muhammad Ali for, the amazing fighter that he was, but a lot of why we admired Muhammad Ali so much was actually really a lot of those things off the field, how he carried himself, the way in which he stood up for what he truly believed in. And so I think part of what makes Friartown so special is that we do have this really unique community, and we really care deeply and empathetically. And it's about how can we utilize who we are, our platform, our ability to impact our campus, impact our student athletes, to do something bigger, right? Because along the way, if you're doing those things, right, we'll always, be someone that's contending. But it's about, like you said, how do we lead in that space? And that's hard,
And words have power. I remember when I first came, and I would end everything with either it's a great day to be a Friar or go Friars, and people thought I was crazy. But there's words are very, very powerful. And I want to share a quick story with you because it's meaningful to me, and it should be meaningful to you as well. I give these wrist bracelets out. Nick has one on, I have one on, and it's called Every Day is Game Day. And some of you probably have one and know what the story behind it is. But the concept behind it that I try to teach our young people is I ask people, how do you feel game day as a competitor? And usually they say, Nick, how do you feel game day? How would you answer that question?
I'm excited. I'm a little bit nervous. I know that I've put everything into it. Like, this is, I've worked so hard for this. You get this euphoric sort of feeling. You seize that sort of moment, especially when we play Creighton. Oh my goodness. Creighton from 2013 to 2017, I couldn't stand them. And just like how jazzed up I would be about game day. You don't even get me going, but absolutely. Continue. I'm sorry.
No, but that feeling, and we all have it when it's really something important. And then I would ask the question, how do you feel when it's, 10 degrees outside, it's snowing, you get up at 5 and go for workout? And they got their head down. So the concept behind it, if you wear it and everybody wears it, and I use it, I kind of snap it. It's like a slap in the face. Is if you treat it every day like it was game day and strung a week, a month, a year, or a lifetime together, can you imagine what you can accomplish? And it's a 50-cent piece of plastic. And one day I went in the training room, the hockey training room, and some of you may remember Drew Brown. He was a great hockey player for us back in 2014 and 15. And one day he got hit in the shin in a quad with a puck, and it wouldn't heal. And so they had to do an x-ray. Unfortunately, long story short, he ended up with Ewing sarcoma and had to go in and have his leg replaced with a rod and so forth and go through chemo. And I saw Drew in the training room, and I walked in, and his hair was all gone. And I gave him a hug, and I said, "How you doing, Drew?" And he said, "I'm doing great, Mr. Driscoll." And I looked down, and he had his everyday game day wrist braces on. It was completely bleached white. And I said, "Drew, you still wearing it?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I wear it every day. This is the mantra I use to go through my chemo." And he said, "Can you do me a favor?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm happy to." He said, "Would you send me 200 of these, because I want to give them to all my family. This is kind of our mantra." And luckily, Drew went into remission. He was with us when we won the national championship. And I'm convinced his spirit and energy was a big part of that.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, he lost the battle to cancer. But I'll never forget that wristband and what it meant to him. And you don't know how God works. He works in mysterious ways. So my children live in California, and I got on a plane and I was flying west. And believe it or not, I'm an introvert by nature, and I've taught myself to engage the world. And usually when I sit on the plane, people beside me, I stay in my own space. And there was a woman sitting to my left, and I said, I'm gonna try to get out of my comfort zone and start a conversation. So I had this conversation. It was a really nice conversation. She looks down and she sees my wrist bracelet. And she said, "What's that?" And I tell her the Drew Brown story, and she starts to cry. And I said, "Geez, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to upset you with the story. I know it's difficult to hear." She said, "No, you don't understand. I'm flying to California to have a double mastectomy. I have breast cancer, and I'm really afraid." And so I said, "Well, let me give you my wristband." And I put it on her, and I gave her my card, and I said, "If there's anything I can ever do." And it was this kind of emotional connection, and I was really sad for her. My mom had breast cancer, and so I had forgotten about the interaction. And then one day I was sitting in my office and my phone rang, and it buzzed, and it was a text message from this woman. Her name was Kathy. And there was a picture of her laying in her hospital bed with her gown on and her hand in the air with a wrist bracelet on. And she said, "I had a complete successful surgery, and they told me to take everything off." And I said, "I'm not taking my wrist bracelet off, and I'm wearing it." And when I thought about that, I thought, now there's two people's lives that hope was given to because they were attacking this. And so you never know who you're going to interact with, the power of it. So I wear these all the time because I honor both of them and other folks. And it makes me realize that we are all connected. I appreciate you letting me share that story, but those are the real things that happen through sport that can actually have an impact, right?
Absolutely. And I know there's I'm looking at this Q&A, and we have some questions, and someone's asking, how can we get an everyday is game day bracelet? So we will make sure one of us will definitely reach out to you. If you are interested, email me or whoever, and we'll make sure that we get those to you, because again, like, Bob was saying, I mean, it is a really, really important reminder, and to really feel that sort of connection. And to kind of to sort of segue, I think that just connection right now is just something that we're all looking for, right? We're all sort of seeking ways in which we can be connected, right? So right now, almost about 100 of us are connected. We're all on our phones or our laptops, and so I guess my question to you, Bob, and I've been fortunate enough to see it in everyday life, working alongside you. How have you seen, our student athletes stay connected, our coaches, the rest of our staff? Because it really is, we're built for this, but there is no playbook. We are sort of kind of learning on the fly, and I think that we have the creativity to deal and manage this, but it's certainly challenging. But I know that there's been some great things going on. So I don't know if you want to share, how that's been going, some of the challenges, and just to stay connected.
Yeah. It's a really good question. I believe this because I've seen it. You know, they talk about hard times builds character. Well, I think character is revealed during hard times. And one of the things I would share with everybody here tonight is that when we had to call the men's basketball team off the bus on the way to Madison Square Garden and to see grown men cry because of that and how they handled it, or to get the women's tennis team back from Florida or the women's softball team back from Florida, and the lacrosse team who was 5-1 and was going to have a great year. I mean, those are heartbreaking moments in young people's lives, opportunities taken away. And if you've lived long enough, you do have heartbreaking moments, but it's really how you handle it. And I will say that our student athletes handled it with complete dignity in class. And I want to share a letter that a young lady on our swim team just on her own wrote. And then we go on friars.com if you get a chance, and it's under Senior Tribune. These are seniors who lost their senior year because of the pandemic. But if you read what Friartown means to them in the gift that they have, they talk about sharing their gift of gratitude. It literally will bring tears to your eyes. So I hope you'd indulge me for a minute, because I think she can say it much better than I can articulate it. Her name is CJ McParton. She's the class of 20. She said, March 6th was supposed to be the last day of classes before spring break, not the last day of classes forever. But I guess if you take anything away from all of this, is that you never know how much time you have, even when you're supposed to have more of it. Life doesn't adhere to, quote, supposed to. It laughs at guarantees, and it has no consideration for the plans we make, nor the way things, quote, should happen. Life just happens, and as harsh as it may feel or seem, we have to adapt and deal with it. It's hard to express in words the love and gratitude I have for Providence College. The heartbreak of leaving this place as a senior is difficult enough, but to do so 2 months early, without the banquets, award ceremonies, traditions, goodbyes, graduation day, unbearable. Halloween, dare I say, soul crushing. I feel all of the above, to the point where I had to ask myself, did I love the college too much? After thinking it over, the answer appeared glaringly clear. It's impossible to love Providence College too much, because Providence College is so much more than an academic institution to all of the people who are blessed with the opportunity to attend for 4 or 3.75 years. To us, PC is home. It taught me countless lessons, pushing and challenging me both in and out of the classroom. I've received an excellent education while learning so much about myself, life, the world around me, the person I want to be, and the changes I want to see in the world. But what sets apart from other institutions of its kind is the magical quality Providence College possesses lies in the people, the Friar family, us, we, together, family, Friars. It might sound cliche, but it's a feeling in the pit of your stomach that grabs hold of you somewhere along the way and never lets go. Classmates, roommates, teammates, and peers turn into friends who turn into family. Teachers, administrators, and coaches exceed their titles and turn into real, salt of the earth people, playing an integral part in it all. Big enough to meet new people senior year, but small enough to see family faces. PC is just right. There isn't a day that goes by where I doubt my choice to commit to Providence College. Honestly, that's something special, something I'll forever be grateful for. Providence College, thank you for the best 3.75 years of my life so far. Thank you for the extended family I never knew I needed and will never forget that I have. Thank you for the countless reminders that we're never alone in Friartown, even when the world feels like it's a pretty lonely place. So I read that to my department one day and actually started crying, because the young lady articulated better than anybody I've heard what a special place this is. Even in the heartbreak, she could see the joy in it. And when I see that, it makes me feel so blessed and fortunate to do the work I do, right? So
Yeah,
thanks for letting me share that with you.
absolutely. And I remember, like you said, I remember when you shared that in our, our all staff meeting, and you weren't the only, teary-eyed person in the Zoom call. It was something that, even hearing it now, and just thinking about, how resilient our student athletes, have been in the midst of, this really, really trying sort of time. And I think we would be remiss without, sort of addressing, the realities of, being in the midst of a pandemic. So I know that we've gotten a couple of questions, and I'm going to kind of sort of paraphrase, and these types of questions are inevitably sort of coming, but I guess really part of what people are wondering is, what's kind of going on as far as, our plans moving forward amidst, coronavirus. Obviously, you see different, colleges doing different things. You see, the NBA, you see all these different things. So I know it's so fluid, and you and I both know, because we're entrenched in it. So I guess, to the best of your ability, how would you kind of, answer or just kind of share what's going on?
Well, I'm fortunate enough as a vice president to be a member of the cabinet and sit in the meetings with the presidents and the other vice presidents about the college. And although an announcement hasn't been made, I feel confident, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Father Shanley or Father Sicard, but we are working on a plan to bring our students back to Providence College. There's a lot of work that's going in place. We're dealing with the governor. We're dealing with our medical experts. I know Dr. Prinny's on the line, and he's helping us put together our return to competition manual. We're working with the I'm on the COVID committee with the Big East. We're working on a manual for the Big East as well. So what I've told everybody is we're operating as if we're going to be boots on the ground, just like usual. Now, it'll be a very different environment. There's got to be, people with masks. There's got to be social distancing, testing, contact management, the size of workouts. There's a whole litany of things we have to do to protect our student athletes. But if you read enough about this, young people, although it can get anybody, young people aren't as vulnerable as somebody my age, if you would. So, and if it doesn't happen, we're going to change the goal line and move at it. But I feel pretty confident that the pieces will be in place that will be able to get back on campus in some form or fashion. Now, how does that impact athletics? We've already made some decisions with the fall sports not to put student athletes on planes. The Big East now, we have an East Coast and a Midwest conference for the soccers and the cross countries and the volleyballs, so we'll protect them from that standpoint. We are talking with the Dunkin' Donuts Center right now. If you've followed anything in Rhode Island, the governor has said we can't open up anything for competition at the Dunk until January. So we're in conversations with Mohegan Sun about possibly taking some games down there. If we can't play at the Dunk, we'll probably play some games on campus with the plan that it would be full go by the Big East. We definitely have to play the Big East tournament because many of you may know, because we didn't play in the Big East, we lost $8 million of TV and ticket revenue. The good news, the Big East was smart enough to have a pandemic insurance policy, so we were made whole on that. And the other good piece of news, we took a pretty significant hit from the NCAA. We would have made it to the NCAA, which would have been worth millions of dollars, but we had over $15 million in reserves in the Big East through people paying to come in and money we put in when we started the conference. So we decided to use 9 million of that to make us whole. So athletically in this fiscal year, we ended up in a positive way. We canceled everything in the spring. Fox Sports has been working with us to figure out how we do this. We're online with Danny Gavitt and the NCAA to figure out how the NCAA tournament goes. But a lot of this is fluid as the science comes out, and Doc could speak to this if he was on, but we have to protect our student athletes, and that's first and foremost what we have to do. Hopefully the testing will be more accurate, and at some point, hopefully in the near future, I don't know how long it's going to take, could take a year or more, that would have a vaccine and we can get back to somewhat normal. But I really think this year for all sports, professional and the like, it's going to be radically different with limited fans.
And one thing I'm as I'm listening, and we've been in a lot of conversations. I think one thing that I always admire about you, Bob, and I think people probably on this Zoom call can really admire your sort of transparency about these sort of things. And I think what is really sort of important is as we're, navigating this very fluid sort of situation, we're updating and changing constantly. We're in task force meetings left and right, and we're really doing our best to really make sure that we're, you know, allowing, the opportunity for our student athletes to compete, but we're always doing so in a way that's safe and that makes sense. And that's, following all of those guidelines. So I know that there's some more sort of specific questions, Maui, some things about, the Dunkin' Donuts Center and Schneider, and some other things that happened at local colleges. And, and while, I'm sure, we can continue to get into some of those details, I really think that, having, the honesty and the transparency. I think there might've been a question about when we announce these sort of things. I know that there's a timeline sort of in place, but, Bob is a very transparent person. And if, one of the things I always admire, about his leadership is the ways in which he just kind of, will tell you, exactly what he knows and where we're sort of going. So I really think that that's been, something that's been, really, really great about some of these things. So, one of the things I did want to sort of, kind of circle back to, we talked about the ways in which some of our Friartown student athletes have put into words, what Friartown means. I was speaking with Marie earlier, and she's on the women's or former women's softball player, and sort of that connection with alumni that's been happening, and seeing some of the ways in which some of our coaches are interacting. I know Coach Gabbs in lacrosse is really doing some great stuff. I think he was watching The Last Dance with his lacrosse guys, and men's soccer doing some great things, women's softball, women's basketball, they're sort of checking. So, is there anything that you've seen, amongst our own staff, amongst our own, coaches that has really sort of, stood out to you during this time? Because like you said, during these hard times, you really start to see a lot of the character and a lot of the resilience and a lot of the creativity. And while it's, easy to sort of feel gloomy about, this thing that, we haven't seen in 100 years, there's so much positive out there. So, I definitely wanted to allow that sort of space to come through in this moment about some of the positive things some of our coaches are doing.
Well, you heard me say early on, culture is most important, and we all build it in certain ways, but a lot of it is connection. And so, my voice can get old after a while. I have a certain way of doing things, and I have a certain belief system, and it's like water on the rock. But you need to hear other leaders and other people in different walks of life share their experiences, because we're all learning how to lead differently, right? You have a plan, all of a sudden it doesn't work. You have to continue to remain flexible and positive. So one of the things we've started to do, and I give Steve Napaloo a lot of the credit as in our conversation, is we've started to invite in really guest speakers for the entire department and the coaches and the staff. We just had Rich Gotham, who's the president of the Celtics, another great Friar, talk about the NBA and how they're dealing it. We've got Doris Burke going to speak to our family next week. After that, we've got John Ferguson, who, is in the NHL. And then Val is going to come in, and she's going to talk as well. We've had Green Berets come in. We've had Navy SEALs come in. I have Jack Clark, my good friend at Cal, who's won 28 national championships. I have on the line. So it's how do you bring more people that can talk about leadership in tough times and how to get through things. I'm really excited. There's an announcement that went out today. We have a new provost. His name is Sean Reed. He's working at my alma mater, Ithaca College, but he's a Providence guy. He went to URI and he has a PhD in business. Now he is a Navy fighter pilot. And had all sorts of, so he's going to be back and part of our team, and I'm going to get him over to talk about what that experience is like representing our great country. So to me, it's about how do you get the best minds, the best leaders, the best speakers, the most inspirational people in front. And not that you have to buy it all, but success leaves clues. And if you can grab some nuggets from all of this and make it part of your life's philosophies, the lessons you learn through difficult times, I would say that breakdowns create breakthroughs. If you're paying attention and looking for the silver linings in these things, I mean, you learn more from losing than you do winning. And so this is a time to really reflect and think about it. I think there's a growth opportunity here that we as an organization will come out better.
I 100% agree. And we've talked previously about the ways in which, challenging times and challenging conversations and challenging moments really sort of breed out the better sort of results. So, in this time, how we do things, what are the things that we're valuing? We really do have an opportunity to sort of sit with them. I always liken it, and I love Coach White to death. I was texting with him earlier today. And, I always think of, back to some of those hard games and those hard lifts where, as an athlete, I didn't grow when it was easy. And, I didn't become, the better athlete, the better soccer player when it was, all comfortable. And so I think, we're really in this opportunity in this time to, engage in some really difficult, spaces and moments. And like you said, bringing in other folk and diverse perspectives. I mean, I think that's really about how we can continue to mold our culture, right? Because, when we're sort of stagnant in our ways, we're stagnant to repeat the same things. And I think that, if we want to be a culture and a community that really stands for something and allows, our student athletes when we go out, or our staff members, our coaches, when they represent, Friartown and other places, that they're doing so in the right way. I think in the group chat, I think, or not in the group chat, rather the Q&A, Allison Rubin was asked a really great question about Bob Walsh, if you don't mind. And she says, Bob, my team got to hear about your leadership from Bob Walsh last week, and I'm lucky to have experienced it myself. You set an example. How do leaders learn to trust their teams to do the best to represent your department? And I think that's a great sort of question, because I know Bob really does some great work, outside of his, coaching capacity with men's basketball, and, really sort of, how do you build that trust? How do you see we build that culture?
Well, I think the first thing, and this is a great opportunity for all of us as leaders, we're all leading something, you're either leading a family or a job or yourself, is you've got to be, and I've learned this over a lifetime, you've got to be, and this is an overly used word, but authentic, but it's actually being kind of open, like being open to saying, hey, I don't have the answers to this, and this makes me nervous, or I'm struggling with this, like being, having an ability to admit that just because you're in charge, you've got kind of all the answers, because oftentimes people look at leaders as, they don't make mistakes and so forth. And I think admitting those things, and the most important thing for me in those relationships is trust, that they know that I have their back and I know that you have my back. And so you don't waste any, it's called the power of trust. You don't waste time on what's someone's agenda, so forth. But that lives in action, right? So you have to be willing to go out of your way to help somebody get to where they want to go for no other reason other than you want to be a good person. And if you kind of live by that code, it creates this domino effect that gets you out of your space. So one of the things that you've heard me say, that for me, the key to life is relationships. You have to build authentic, real relationships with people outside your world. So if we just stayed in athletics, we may have great relationships in here, but you need everybody else. You need the people on this call. You need the president. You need the NCAA. You need the governor. You need the Dunkin' Donuts Center. You need the donors. But you got to be 100% responsible for that relationship. It's not a 50-50 deal. So one of the things we talk about in athletics is get out of your comfort zone and go build a new relationship with someone with no intent in trying to get anything back, other than to say, how can I help you? How often is your life when you're in a conversation, somebody say, how are you doing? And really mean it, really listen, and then say to you, yeah, how can I help you? It's really powerful. And it's a simple thing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, well, you're really asking me how I feel? And not to give you that, good, I'm fine stuff. I'm talking about real substance. Now, it takes time and energy, but I'm convinced that championship organizations and teams have that in spades.
Yeah, and I think that, like you were saying, when you really sort of do that authentically and people really ask, like, hey, how are you doing? And I know people, for me, a lot of coworkers in, the last couple of weeks, we've seen some really, horrific atrocities. And a lot of people have reached out to me and said, hey, Nick, like, how are you doing? And not just like, hey, good, like, every day's game day, like, but
Yeah.
really sort of asking like, hey, how are you doing? What is it that I can do? And recognizing that you might not have the answer, but really sort of that genuine care and that trust and really, demonstrating that it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to sort of be about it. And I think that's one thing that, we've done and we're going to continue to do as a department. We can say that, we want to strive for championships, but if we're not putting in the investment and we're not, trying to recruit top players and top coaches, then we can't really say, that we're doing it. And the same thing with, trying to, retain, students of color or whatever sort of, goals that we have, it's not about just saying it, it's about doing it. And I think that's the really, really great part of, the Friar culture is that it's not just words, right? And we don't get it right all the time, and
it takes hard work. You and I talk about it. The other word I was searching for was being vulnerable, being willing to be vulnerable. So one of the things I've asked my students and staff to do is everybody's feeling vulnerable right now. The world feels like it's coming to an end. There are people who've never been through this before. So a lot of people are scared, particularly a lot of older people. So one of the things I started doing, because it made me feel good to reach out and get me out of my own head, I went through my Rolodex and called everybody I knew, just because I wanted to reach out and see how they're doing. And then that created this domino, and there was like these linkages. And I think because space we have time because we're home, but the space of feeling vulnerable and even afraid for our life at times, it creates an opening to have real conversation, right? So if you want to build relationships, there's no better time to do it than now, right? So it's kind of this window. Now it'll close again, but we'll go back to normal. But how cool would it be to build something authentic and real during a time people need you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
what are some of the other questions? Did we get them all? The questions?
I've seen one question that we just got in. This is what would you want to say to the fans going forward? Brendan Lee says, my son just finished his freshman year, and I have another son who's an incoming freshman. Both love sports. PC is a great business school, but the athletic piece was a part of their decision in choosing PC. So, not that you ever have to sell PC because you are Mr. Friartown, but if you had anything to kind of share with Brendan, their family about choosing PC, especially during this time, what might you say?
Yeah, I would say that we're going to do as much, if not more, than any other school in the country to kind of get this thing back. A lot of this we're controlled by what the governor said, but things are starting to open up. We've already had some conversations, certainly about men's basketball. If we can't play immediately at the dunk, we could go down to the Mohegan Sun and get fans in there. We're working on some of those details. So, will we be able to get 10,000 people in the dunk this year? I don't know. I would doubt it because of the social distancing, but there will be games. We will have competitions. There'll be fans at the competitions. How many, I can't say yet because we haven't worked out the details. But in the time frame that your children are here, I'm very confident we'll be back to normal. And if we don't, then we've got bigger issues we got to deal with from a health standpoint. So I can't say it will be like it was last year, but just know that we're doing everything we can to do the best we can to get it back.
Absolutely. A couple of questions that I see. I see a question from Mark Kendrick. This is a historical question. Any thoughts on Patino's comments about his biggest regret leaving PC? He recognized, that PC was something special. I don't know if you have any comments about that or.
I think he's probably right. Why would you leave Friartown? How well has it worked since then?
Oh man. So we got a couple more questions. I know, some people just out of fairness to some of the questions they've asked about, Brown University made a decision today about eliminating some of those sports. I don't know if commenting on them is something that you would feel comfortable doing or.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak. I know Jack real well. He's a Providence guy. They had the third highest number of sports in the country, and it's not a financial issue for Brown. They're a wealthy institution. It's more about they haven't had success, and when you try to be too big at something, you get mediocrity. At the end of the day, winning matters, right? So I think what they did was they moved some of those sports to club sports, so you still have the opportunity to compete. but you got to take the money, invest it, and be all in on something. Like we have a tiered approach. Not all of our teams are fully funded. You've got the top teams who are trying to win national championships, the mid-range that have partials, and we have some sports that don't have any scholarships at all. Their participation and enrollment stuff. We don't have the resources to be all in on anything. It's too expensive. But the ones that we're all in on, we expect to win championships in.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that's, that's a question, I think part of, and we've talked about it. I think you might have sent out an email, amidst, coronavirus and people thinking about, is that a decision related to the climate, or is that something a little bit more about, like you were saying, just sort of the culture? So I appreciate you sharing that. I know some people in the chat have asked for the letter that Bob read. It's on the Senior Tribune, but we can work on getting that out to you individually if you would like to. Shoot me an email. I might actually put my email in there. I might have Marie, if she could actually put my email in the chat for people to email me if you guys have questions. One thing I did want to ask, during this time, we're sitting with our thoughts a lot. We are with higher levels of stress. It seems like, if when you turn on the news, it's just bad news here, bad news there. And what have you done? I know that you're big into mindfulness. What are some of the things that, you've done during this time, just for yourself? You have a stressful job. I say that, and sometimes I think, man, I would, love to be an AD, and maybe one day that might be a path for me, but I've recognized that you certainly have a stressful job. So is there anything that, you've done, and you're really ahead of the game with mindfulness?
Well, it's interesting. I struggled like we all did when we were stuck at home because it got me out of my routine. And, I ate too many chocolate chip cookies. I probably drank too much wine. I didn't exercise enough. I just, it seemed like a snow day, right? And then I realized I was losing my everyday's game day. And so I wrote a list of the things that I needed to do to get back on track if I was going to have this growth mindset. And I shared it with all of the students because they were struggling as well. And we all have our own routines. I get up early in the morning, and I've learned when I lived in California, which was kind of granola-y, how to meditate, how to use your mind. My graduate degree is in sports psychology, so I learned early on that it all starts with what you feed your brain rather than letting all these crazy thoughts filter around. So, I meditate in the morning. I instituted this mindfulness institute from Brown that came over and worked with my senior staff, and a lot of them came kicking and screaming. But I think during these stressful times, it really helps. I think, get enough sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, you're going to be a mess. You got to exercise. And then you got to walk your talk. If you're asking people to do stuff, then you've got to do it as well. You got to stay connected, and then just be grateful that the people on this call and all of us here are the fortunate ones, right? I'm assuming most people have a place to eat, live, they have heat, they have a car, they have college. I mean, we are, as much as it's impacted us from you can't go up, I'm hoping there's nobody in the line struggle, but there are a lot of people struggling out there. And so it's really, how can you be grateful? And then how can you help the less fortunate, whether that's donating money or food to the food bank, or that's the time to step up and do this stuff. And I find when I do those kinds of things, it makes me feel better about me, that I have some role in it. And I chunk it down to one day at a time. I have this concept that I say, I'm going to be the best I can today. And believe it or not, I have a ritual at the end of the night. I'll ask my wife before we go to sleep. I said, tell me the 3 things that you're really grateful for today. And you can come up with 3 really good ones. And it's a nice way to put a little ribbon on it. Okay. And then get up and do it again. And I'm a creature of habit. And so what works, I continue to do it. But it all starts here because, we have this thing as, you're never alone in Friartown. There's a lot of people that are struggling out there psychologically. And it's really important that you ask for help, that you work on that, because there's going to be a lot of people going to struggle when they come out of that stuff. And I'm not saying I have the answer. It just works for me.
Yeah, and one thing I appreciate is that I think you really invested early in student athletes and in our staff, with mindfulness. So I think coming on it from this side now, and and really seeing how useful this stuff is. It's not just something that, you know, you did have a degree in sports psychology, and, you know, that's part of your background, but, you know, really seeing how much it's really helping us, right? And I, you know, all of us are trying to find our own routines. I have a bedtime yoga routine, and I've been trying, and it's been working. It's only 7 minutes on YouTube, but all that to say that, you know, it really is about, you know, really trying to do the best to kind of take care of yourself, mentally, and really, you know, finding purpose in what you're doing, right? And I would say that I think, one of the most, you know, incredible parts about Friartown is the way in which we find purpose even in hard times. So our purpose isn't just winning games, right? So it's about, you know, being the best citizen we can be. It's about, you know, helping out the Rhode Island Food Bank with our recent shirt drive that we did. It's about our frontline workers. It's about all the ways in which we can find purpose in what we do. And I know that, you know, we spend so much time talking about purpose, and really in these moments we really get to live it out. And, you know, I think that's something that, you know, if we could pass that on to folk, just about really finding that purpose, it helps you get through the day. Because you're right, it can feel overwhelming. You know, there's some days where I'm like, you know what, this is a lot. But then grounding yourself in purpose, and I think, you know, we started to, or continue to build a culture of purpose, and really finding that, just, you know, outside of, you know, kicking a ball, outside of, you know, dribbling a basketball, outside of hitting a softball, we found purpose. And I think that's what sets us apart. And that's, you know, part of, you know, what we've been trying to do as we go through. I'm also a big believer in respecting people's time. It's 7:54 and we still have time. I'm not, you know, cutting people out early, but if you have quick questions, rapid fire, I do have some rapid fire questions for Bob. I've been mulling on these for a while. But if you have questions, now is definitely a great time. Real quick, just ask away. So that way we can make sure that we get that in before the time ends. But I will ask you this. So are you watching The Last Dance?
Am I? Not yet, no.
Okay, all right. Are you so does that mean you are a binge watcher? You'll wait till it's over and then you'll just sit, okay, and just go all the way through? What's the last thing that you have been watching on Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max? What's on Bob's TV when he's not meditating?
You know, probably the last one I watched, and I told Father Shanley should watch it, but he said he wouldn't do it. It was Tiger King.
It's a cultural phenomenon, you know. It's fascinating.
I think I closed out on Westworld. I killed that one as well. You watched Westworld?
I have. It's a lot. It's good. It's good.
Yeah. So, you know, I watch a lot of stuff, but I can't tell you the names of half the stuff I watch. I've got 4 or 5 of them going at the same time. I've tried to limit it and get back to reading, go from one to the next. You know, I've been watching though lately. I've been watching the reruns of the Olympics, and I was just watching the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. And my former boss, Dave Maggart at Cal, was a shot putter on that one. But that was the one with Bob Beamon actually had the long jump, and the 3 gentlemen from San Jose raised their fist. Remember the whole protest around it? And Wilma Rudolph. But it's interesting to go back and see where we were as a culture and a society, and how far we haven't come since 1968. Yeah. And then I watched the one with Jesse Owens running in Germany with Hitler and stuff. It's fascinating to go back and look at the Olympic Games. So I find sporting events that have history like that really are impactful, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, you know, one of the things it's really powerful is you see how much we haven't changed, but we also see the ways in which some of the things now are a direct result of what, you know, was happening then. Some of the protests and activism isn't, you know, a new phenomenon, and seeing its lineage and seeing again, you know, how sport really does transcend just sport itself. It reflects culture, reflects all these big things. Are you cooking more? Or are you on Grubhub? Are you Postmates? Are you finding that now that
I'm eating more? I mean, my wife's the cook. I'm not allowed to course, I'm going out and get a burrito tonight, so that's my big treat.
I understand. I understand that.
No, I've never got into cooking. I don't have the patience for that.
Oh, well, now, now might be the time. And then I'm gonna take a question from here. This is a question, and I can answer it, but I know you could say, does Father Sicard have the same passion for athletics as Father Shanley? I think we would be remiss without acknowledging the outstanding commitment for almost 15 years that Father Shanley has put into Friar athletics. And I know for you, when you were first here, and how much he really believed in your vision. And to see, this be his final year and transitioning to Father Sicard. And, we've had the pleasure of working with him, but I can say that, he's been, really on board, but I know you could probably speak a little bit more to, his commitment as we're sort of transitioning into new leadership.
Father has been the best teammate from a president that I've worked with in 46 years, and I've worked with a lot of good presidents. And what made his gift so strong is he let you do your job, right? He very seldom said no. He wanted high standards, and he was a competitive guy, and so he was a perfect president for someone like me who wanted to help build something special. So I love him. He's like a brother. He's a great man, and I know he's going to be around to help us. The other good piece of news, Father Sicard has been his right-hand person for 15 years, sees and understands the value that a well-run athletic program can have on the brand of the institution, both from a fundraising and admission standpoint, quality of life. We had a parent ask, what about the two sons? That's why people want to be part of something, with a small school playing in the biggest conference in the nation. So I don't think we're going to skip a beat. The last thing I'd probably leave you with is we always wanted Friartown to be a destination and not a stepping stone. Friartown was a place great people would come, have some success, and they'd go someplace else because they didn't think they could sustain it. Well, with the infrastructure, the fundraising, the league, and the coaches, nobody's leaving Friartown anymore because it's a destination place, and that's a testament to the trustees, to Father Shanley, to everybody in our organization. And that's the way it should be. You want to be a championship organization, you got to keep your best people, or you have to attract your best people back, like you, Nick. And I'm not just saying that because you're on this. I mean that sincerely. And there are other great people like you, and then the people come and they stay. That's how you become great.
Absolutely. And I think that Friartown really has become a destination, right? It's not something that you skip over. And I, even from a playing perspective, it's a place people want to be. It's not, something that it's not a place that, people are avoiding. This is where it is. And we're a force, and, we are a small school, but we're mighty in many ways. And so, I think that, what you just kind of, talked about and really hit on, I think really sort of summarizes a lot of, not only our conversation, but just sort of, just the spirit of Friartown. I think that, when we think about, dealing through tough times, and we think about, all the uncertainty, I can rest my hat if I had a hat. I could certainly rest my hat on how resilient and how driven not only is our athletic department, but our college, the culture, what we're building. We are continually growing. We are the place we want to be at. We are a destination, but there's so much more that we can continue to do. And for all of the folk that, were here tonight, we had about almost 100 people. I know some people have dwindled out, but I really want to thank you all. This was a great time. I can tell you, Bob, and I was a little bit nervous. I was like, I don't know how to moderate a conversation in front of other people. And
you did great.
But it was certainly great. We will be sending out. I know I saw as I'm trying to scan through the chat here. We will be sending out a follow-up email about this event. If you have any other questions, both of us are really reachable. Again, thank you all for joining us. I don't even have the words to thank you enough. Bob, I appreciate it. We could continue going on for hours. It feels natural, but we do want to respect people's time. And you got to go get your burrito, before it gets too late.
Get my burrito. I got some Netflix to watch. Take care.
That's what I'm saying. All right, go
Thank
Friars.
you both.
Be safe, everybody.
Go Friars.
Thanks for it. Go Friars.
so
Thanks,
much, Bob.
Nick. Good job, man.
See ya.